Sure enough, in 5 seconds, it spit out three verses, a chorus, and a bridge about how Scooby-Doo and the gang hopped in the mystery machine. Actually, let me read it to you here. It says, verse 1. In a world of mystery, a tale to unfold. Scooby-Doo and the gang, fearless and bold. They hopped in the mystery machine ready to go to solve a new case where the monsters would show. Pre-chorus. But this time things were different. They couldn't ignore a creature so massive rising from the ocean floor. Godzilla, the legend, a force to be reckoned, a clash of worlds, the ultimate confection. Chorus. Scooby-Doo, where are you? It's a monster's delight. With Godzilla in town, it's a monstrous fight. Scooby-Doo, where are you? We're in a jam. But with friends by your side, you'll catch that big, bad Godzilla man. There's a long story across the three verses. Velma, Daphne, Fred, and Shaggy are named in verse 2. They end up capturing Godzilla, but then find out that Godzilla was actually a misunderstood monster. And so in the end, they become friends. And guess what? It rhymed. All in 5 seconds. Google CEO Sundar Pichai once said, quote, "I've always thought of AI as the most profound technology humanity is working on, more profound than fire or electricity or anything we've done in the past." So friends, we are experiencing the greatest communication shift in our generation. Modern AI can help us make sense of complex data, automate routine tasks, and create engaging content that resonates with our diverse communities. It will completely change jobs. It will change our culture and how we see the world. Much like how the steam engine, the printing press, the internet, all of these things completely changed our culture and our world. So this is also a game-changing, a complete shift in our culture and in our world. And I believe that we as Christians have a lot to ponder, a lot to reflect on, and to act upon to further our mission in an AI world. So inevitably, the emotion that most people feel after astonishment, excitement, is fear. Fear of losing my job, fear of looming obsolescence. We call it FOLO. Fear of how these tools could be used to cause harm. Fear of the unknown. So much is going to change in the next 5-10 years. And so today, I hope to do three things with you all. Number one is to demystify generative AI. So what is it? Where did it come from? There's a lot of conversation about all the things it can do, but I really believe you can't really know where you are going until you know where you've been. And so there's going to be a quick understanding of the history behind generative AI. Number two, engage in a thoughtful discussion about the limitations and the concerns. And then number three is to then start going into some practical tips and to try it out and to experiment with this tool. All right, so let's dive right in. Chapter 1, demystifying AI, the history of artificial intelligence. So the term artificial intelligence was coined by John McCarthy all the way back in 1956 at a conference in Dartmouth College. And the goal of this conference was to, quote, "to proceed on the basis of the conjecture that every aspect of learning or any other feature of intelligence can, in principle, be so precisely described that a machine can be made to simulate it." So this marks the beginning of the pursuit of creating machines that could mimic human intelligence. Now, early AI models consisted of symbolic AI or rule-based AI. And basically, the developers would describe the world to the machine, aka this is a cat, or this is a dog. This is how you make a sentence, et cetera, et cetera. And their goal was to have the machine to be able to recognize images, to recognize the world around them. These are the grammatical rules. And so you input all the grammatical rules into the algorithm, hoping that eventually the machine can start speaking language. So the problem is, for 30 years, developers tried this approach of rule-based AI, teaching the machine all the rules, but it always failed. No matter how hard they tried to describe a cat or describe a dog, the machine was not able to distinguish between the two. Then in the 1980s, a new approach to developing AI is introduced called machine learning. And this came out because of two reasons. Number one, rule-based AI was failing for 30 years. But number two, and this is really interesting and really fascinating to me, it was based on the emerging research in developmental psychology in the 70s and 80s that began to understand that no parent ever teaches their child all the rules before they understand the world. So no parent says to their child, this is a cat. Cats are mammals with cute noses and pointy ears and long tails. No, they don't describe all the details that makes up a cat. What does a parent do? They show them cats. No parent has to teach their child, for instance, every grammatical rule before a child can learn how to speak. How does a child learn how to speak? They hear and they hear and they listen and they imitate. And over time, they began to speak language. That's why native speakers are often the worst to teach their language to other people. A human experiences the world by they absorb immense amounts of stimuli, or you would say immense amounts of data, and they interpret it. And that is how we learn. And that is how we grow in intelligence and begin to understand the world. And so rather than giving all these rules to the machine, instead, now they begin to give a large corpus of data to the machine and then push it to learn on its own, to build its own rules. And this is called machine learning. And for 30 years of research and trial and error, this model also fails across 30 years. That is until 2010. Now, by then, machine learning had a bad reputation, so it was called, sort of rebranded, if you will, to deep learning. And to everyone's surprise, the AI machine succeeds. Now, there wasn't much difference in the algorithm, but what was different was the amount of data. When they first began machine learning in the 80s, the developers would give like 100 photos of cats, 100 photos of dogs. But now, with the advent of the internet, with the amount of data that is available grew exponentially. And so in 2010, developers begin machine learning not with 100, but with 100,000 or 1,000,000 photos of cats and dogs. And when increasing the amount of data, now the machine is able to recognize the world. They were able to distinguish a cat from a dog. Nowadays, if you put your face to your phone, it knows that it is you. This technology did not exist 10 years ago. So AI experts call the last 10 years, they call it the era when machines begin to recognize the world. If a machine can distinguish between a cat and a dog, it can also now distinguish between a person and a bicycle. And so we can even begin to dream about self-driving cars. But here, there's still two limitations at this point in history. Number one, it can recognize and distinguish, but it cannot create something original. There's no originality yet. And number two, it still cannot create language due to the extremely high hurdle called grammar. Linguists said that a machine will never be able to overcome the hurdle of language. There must be some sort of evolutionary advantage that humans have, something in their brain that we can understand language that machines will never be able to learn. Well, in 2018, OpenAI, a new startup company, presents the GPT. And GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And from this, you could actually understand what it is. So generative, it's creating new text from scratch. It's creating something original in a sense. Pre-trained. So this AI is a neural network of computers pre-trained in a large corpus of data. So it's kind of in a confined network of data, so to speak, that it's been trained and trained again and again. And T is transformer. And this is what's interesting. So a year prior in 2017, the transformer was a architectural model developed by Google. And what this is, it's a statistical model. And it's a special neural network that now allows for not just millions of data interpretation, but trillions and trillions of data points at the same time. And it's a statistical model that is selecting the most likely next word based on your prompts. And I'll just add a little side here. Apparently, legend has it that Google had red lights flashing. Like this was going to completely mess up their business model because Google depended on ad revenue, depended on you to search and click. That was 95% of their of their revenue. But now this is going to be doing the interpretation for you. People aren't going to search on Google anymore or click things. That means no more ads. That it threatened 95% of their revenue. And so legend has it that Google tried to quiet it down or kind of shut it down, so to speak. But a year later, OpenAI takes their transformer model and presents the GPT. So essentially, OpenAI's GPT it's producing one massive map of the entire English language after being trained using all of the pre-existing language data on the internet. So it's almost like a navigation tool. It's a roadmap of the entire English language achieved through deep learning. So this is how AI tools like ChatGPT works. I think what I really want to highlight though is where did this come from? I think is so interesting and fascinating. This came from implementing the latest in developmental psychology. It's mimicking how infants and young children learn and experience the world. That is perhaps why ChatGPT and these other tools sound the most human a machine ever has. And therefore is causing follow for some of us like communication directors like myself. Uh, so this is sort of the general history of ChatGPT, AI tools, where it's been through and how we got to where we are today. And so I would like to turn it over to Blake and to all of you. We're going to go into breakout rooms, and I'm going to invite you to take 5 minutes to have a short discussion in your groups. Two questions is one, if you have used an AI tool before, what was your first ChatGPT or AI experience? And if you've never used it before, what stood out to you from this first section, from the history of AI? So we'll go into breakout rooms and we'll spend some time discussing these questions.
All right, we're going to break you up into groups of 3, and I will set some. I'll just send some reminders in chat to say, hey, you have a few minutes left as we get close to that time. So James and I will kind of rotate a little bit, but have a good conversation.
Hello. Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
Hello, everybody.
Morning. Oh, there's six of them. Six?
Recording in progress.
And now this is the correct way. Here we are. All right.
Yes, good morning. Hello. I am using it. This is Jessica. I'm using it primarily in my workplace. I work for a Lutheran seminary in Chicago, and it's been really a great resource. I've used it to craft letters, especially during really, really busy times when I've gotten requests from alums or, kind of special initiatives. So to kind of get me started, and I'll just share like a couple of bullets sometimes, or basically a concept for whatever it is I'm asking. And it could be a letter, or it could be kind of a project plan. I've used it to craft messaging around some thoughts that I've had. And all of those have come out pretty good. And I have had back and forth interchange with Chat GPT. So kind of going back and saying, this is great. Can you do this? Or it's been very fascinating, to engage it. And then I I have taken some. I attended professional training in fundraising this past fall, and there were several organizations there that were presenting on how they're utilizing Chat GPT, from anything to, as I said, letters or messaging of different nature, around sympathy or celebrations, ordinations, that kind of thing, or even fundraising plans. And I found that really, really fascinating what organizations are doing. So that's where my interest has peaked, and I'm hoping to do more of that.
This is Robin. I've used it in a couple of ways, but not very much. More so in the fall. So I used it to, like Jessica said, craft a couple of letters. One in particular was a financial. I'm a pastor, so I was going out to a church, to my church, with a like in a stewardship kind of format. So I wanted to be I took my text that I already had, and I entered it into the GPT and had it kind of clean up the text. So that was an interesting way to use it. And I liked how it said what I was saying better. And then I also used it once. I had read an article about using Chat GPT for sermon preparation. So I entered in whatever scripture I was using and sermon illustrations, and it did not give me a sermon illustration. So what I was hoping for there did not work. But anyways.
I'm
sorry.
Go ahead, Robin.
I'm in Roanoke, Virginia.
And I'm in Chicago. I'm at Faith United Methodist Church, Chicago. Okay. Well, good connecting with you all.
Same. Yes.
Yes.
While closing, we'll
Recording
give
in
another
progress.
few seconds as everybody gets back in here. All right, James, that should be everybody.
All right, great. Well, welcome back, everyone. And if there were any sharing or findings you wanted to share, go ahead and write it in the chat so the community can hear and get an experience of what you've talked about. I want to move right along to chapter 2 of our session today, and that is to talk about concerns and limitations. And these are, I would say, the 3 most common concerns that I hear about, right? Is AI going to replace my job? Is it ethical? Isn't it plagiarizing? And then who owns the content? Who takes responsibility? And those are some big questions that we'll be addressing. I would like to address at this time. So number one is AI going to replace my job? We've all heard the doomsday predictions. AI is coming for our jobs. And I would say there's some reality to that concern, but at the same time, I would say what's more likely is we're going to see actually a leveling of the playing field. So, excuse me, you may have seen this graph circulating around, coming out of Ethan Mollick's research published middle of last year. It was with a consulting firm, BCG, where they tested the performance gains consultants got from using GPT-4 in common work tasks. And you see this quality improvement of those who used AI. But that's not what really piqued my interest. Another part of the study shared a graph where lower performing consultants, when equipped with GPT-4, saw their performance skyrocket, and they were able to match and in some cases even surpass the performance of their higher performing peers. And so the fear of AI replacing human jobs, not entirely unfounded, right? I talked about how the scribes, during a long time ago, eventually lost their jobs over time when the printing press became a reality, right? But however, the reality for us might be less about replacement at this time and more about enhancement. Less about replacement, more about enhancement. This is a tool that will really enhance our work in ministry. If this plays out, AI can help create a more equitable workplace. It can reduce the performance gap between employees, leading to a more balanced and fair work environment. There's also conversations about language, right? So for those whom English is not their first language, what does it look like for them to now be able to thrive and be able to share their ideas better in the workforce, in their communities? Concern number two, is using AI ethical? Isn't it plagiarizing? So this is a very important question. To answer this question, I'd like to show you a 3-minute YouTube video by Chris Do. Chris Do is an Emmy award-winning designer, director, and the founder of The Future. And he presents a compelling argument on AI and copyright infringement. Now, here Chris talks specifically from the perspective of a graphic designer and the visual generative AI tools like Midjourney and Dolly that are out there. But I believe the concepts also translate to language generative AI tools as well. So let's take a listen and just give me a thumbs up just to make sure you hear the video when I play it. All right.
If you look at a poster from Saul Bass and you like the graphic quality of it and the way that he renders images in a very simplistic form, and you go out and do something that's very graphic and renders something in a very simplistic form, I don't believe you're turning yourself into the authorities. I recently spoke to a professor who's like the department chair of the master's program in one of these prestigious design schools. And he's like, I did the deep dive. AI is not doing anything different than what humans do. It's just called looking. And you look and then you make it your own. And a lot of people, I don't think they understand this. The way that AI is trained on copyrighted images is before it processes or looks at the image, it's been diffused. That's why it's called stable diffusion. It blurs the image and then it kind of starts to squint its eyes, if you will, and makes out certain patterns. And in the very beginning, eyes and hands and certain parts look really weird because they're still learning, like a child seeing the world for the first time. A lot of people who don't understand how AI works, it literally thinks it lifts a part of something and puts it into the other thing like you would a photo bash, right? So it's not actually using the pixels, it's an approximation, it's understanding of it. And maybe I have this wrong, but if humans look at work, and we're all looking at work all the time, quite literally, you're looking for inspiration and you're processing lots of things and you're doing the deep look, and then you go back and you create some things. What are you looking for? Why would you look at it if not in some way to borrow elements, assets, or that spark? And because you don't know how to explain your process and you can do it fairly slowly, you forgive yourself. You give yourself a pass that it's not copying, but you are, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's two kinds of copyright infringement that really bother me. One is the blatant lifting of assets and images that don't belong to you and you use without paying for nor crediting the person who did it. And that kind of copying should come at a heavy cost. But if you look at a poster from Saul Bass and you like the graphic quality of it and the way that he renders images in a very simplistic form, and you go out and do something that's very graphic and renders something in a very simplistic form, I don't believe you're turning yourself into the authorities. If you use colors inspired by somebody, you're not turning yourself in. Nobody is. But because what's happening is non-artists, non-quote unquote creative people are using tools like this and doing work at scale that rival your technical skill, it's a very threatening gesture, and I can see why people are really concerned. But this is not for me to decide. It'll be for the courts to figure it out. The word of caution I would throw out to everybody is don't wait for the courts to figure this out. You need to be playing with the tools, integrating some of these things into your workflow, and you draw the line for yourself, but don't artificially handicap yourself. It's like to say you want to do photo retouching, but you're not going to use any software to do it. You don't want to use Photoshop, you don't want to use Illustrator, you don't want to use any 3D image making program because you want to do it the old way. You want to build real models in real life and you want to light things. And that's how people used to do it. You're putting yourself at a distinct disadvantage. That's my take on it. Sho, what's yours?
Beautifully said, Chris. That's absolutely my take. How you described how the AI actually thinks through this imagery, people that actually use it kind of understand that it reflects our process too. And then by utilizing the tool, we actually do realize, oh, I am getting better. This is a craft like anything else. My expertise, my knowledge does translate. So I'm really excited to hear that you kind of have a similar view on how to approach this.
Now, of course, if you simply Google AI copyright infringement or AI lawsuits, you will see that there are many lawsuits that are going on right now between music companies, politicians, celebrities, etc., and big tech AI companies. And so, yes, the courts will have to decide where the line will be, and the line will probably continue to move over our lifetimes. But remember, GPT, the content is essentially original content generated through a machine learning model influenced by a vast corpus of data. So to Christo's point, it is very, very similar to how you and I are influenced and inspired by the work of writing and art that we've been exposed to over the course of our lives. And so OpenAI says pretty boldly and is fighting against all these different lawsuits that are happening right now. This content is original. So that's one. That would begin the conversation of answering the question: where is the line? Is this plagiarizing? But that will continue to. That'll be a conversation that we continue to have. Number three, who owns the content? So OpenAI and all of these AI generative companies are very clear in their guidelines and their bylaws. All that content generated by AI tools is owned by you, by the user. It's likened to a software application to produce a piece of work, right? So let's say you use Photoshop to create an image. Does that belong to Adobe? No, it belongs to you, right? When you write something on Microsoft Word, does that belong to Microsoft? No, it belongs to you, right? So the software is a facilitator, but the end product is the user's responsibility. And so that's another key point, that the user needs to take responsibility. So for those of us who are maybe using this tool, this can't be a candy machine and then you just take it and put it up online. You need to be able to take ownership of the content. So it means ensuring that you understand the capabilities and the limits of the AI that you're using and taking responsibility for the final content that's being published or distributed. So let's talk limitations. And these are due to the fact that this AI model depends on training data. And these are the three that I get here. I think I really want to focus on. Number one is it's limited to a particular time in history. Number two is the potential for generating inaccurate information, and three, potential bias. I will say this continues to change and grow and get better, but fundamentally, these will always be issues. This will always be sort of a cat and mouse game, so to speak, because of how it's being built. And I'll talk more about that later. But number one, limited to a particular time in history. So right now, ChatGPT, if you have version 4, the training data has a cutoff in April of 2023. So its responses are based on the data it was trained on. And so If you try to ask it, for instance, about the current Hamas-Israel war, it won't be able to touch into that well. Now, nowadays, if you have the paid version, it does begin to connect with Bing, and so sometimes it's able to pull that data. But for the most part, especially if you have the free version, you'll see that limitation in terms of a particular time in history because it's a pre-trained model. And number two, potential for generating inaccurate information. So a few months ago, a team of pastors and leaders in our conference made a trip to Tanzania, and we put together a pastor school. As a communications director, our job was to compile all of the curriculum that our pastors who were doing the visit were going to teach into a booklet, print it, bring it with us to Tanzania. Now, during the production phase, I was looking over the content and I was specifically looking at the class on prayer, and I saw the following text. Now, can someone write in the chat, what's wrong with this text? A big red flag went off in my head when I saw this. What do y'all think? Some people said the typical, like, oh, it's wordy. Sometimes ChatGPT can be wordy. There we go. Oh, right on it, right? Michael said the name, right? The name. Big red flag. Thank you, Michael. Right. So I didn't want to assume, but Reverend Dr. A. Stephen Doherty did not sound like a name of a Tanzanian pastor. And so I did some research, and sure enough, there is no Reverend Dr. A. Stephen Doherty. That is a United Methodist pastor in Tanzania. And so I approached this pastor like, hey, what happened? Where did you get this? And sure enough, they confessed that they put into ChatGPT, hey, give me some quotes of pastors in United Methodist pastors in Tanzania about prayer, and it spit this out and just copy pasted it into their curriculum. And I said, you cannot do that. So ChatGPT, it's based on patterns and its training data, right? And so if there's a lack of data needed to fulfill the request that you're asking for, or if a popular but incorrect piece of information was prevalent in their training data, there is a chance that it might reproduce this misinformation. Now, if I put this prompt in today, now this was last May or May of 2023. If I put this in today, it will not make a false claim of make up a pastor and put this quote out. It will say, I don't have that information. But I think it's going to be very important to know that this is always going to be a possibility. And so you should always double check and fact check information you're getting from ChatGPT or these generative AI tools, especially if you're using it for decision making or sharing information with others. And so this is where we're going to see that this is a tool. This will not replace humans. This will not replace you. It's like a really book smart intern and a really, really smart assistant. You will never give your intern mission critical tasks. You would never depend on your intern to make vision casting decisions, right? Or to have the final say. This is a tool that can be very, very helpful. It's like a really, really, really smart, book smart intern, maybe not so street smart intern. Does that make sense? Always fact check. And the last limitation is potential bias. I will again say that ChatGPT, these OpenAI, these other companies continue to do a lot of good work in limiting this issue. But again, ChatGPT's responses are based on its training data. What? All the English language, all the sentences that are on the internet. Think of the comment section on YouTube. What are some of the implicit biases or maybe explicit biases of those people, those authors, those organizations? Again, ChatGPT has gotten better and better with every update, but there's always going to be a potential for bias, implicit bias, for harmful bias. It's based on the biases that exist within us, who have written all the stuff on the internet of people. I call this perhaps the best digital mirror that has ever been created. This is reflecting our goodness and also our sinfulness. Now I'm becoming a bit of a pastor here, but just so you're aware that the potential for bias is always going to be there. All right. Uh, now I want to, Blake, this would be the portion where we could take a break or we can go into actually going into some of the fun stuff. But what would you like to do?
Yeah, I would say what we're going to do is have a quick breakout to have you test these tools. And if you have no idea what you're doing, that is fine. James will give you some parameters to try. But I do want to say, since this is an hour and a half webinar, let's take a very, very very brief break, just for whatever you need to do, refill your coffee, have a quick bio break. And or if you have not yet signed up for one of these free programs, such as ChatGTP, please do that now. It should only take you about 2 minutes. I'll put the website here. I've mentioned it a couple times, but if you have not done that yet, please go ahead and do this because that will allow you to use the tool in this breakout. And I just put this here. That is a free option if you do 3.5. Some other free ones, ChatGPT is one, Google Bard has one, but I typically don't recommend it because it's a little bit behind the curve in the technology. And then also Perplexity. Somebody just mentioned that. James just mentioned that. That's my second favorite probably, and Claude is another. Those are kind of the three that typically we recommend because they all have specific uses they're really good at, but are the three best from our testing. All free, you can have a free tier. So go ahead and download that. We'll take a quick 3-minute break. We'll come back at, let's say, 11:48 Central Time or 12:48 Eastern Time. That gives you about 3.5 minutes, and then we will sort ourselves out. We have a question in chat too. Is chat.open the same as GPT? Yes, it is. Just so you're aware, OpenAI is the company that is the creator of ChatGPT. So that link that I've been sharing here, chat.openai.com, is ChatGPT. That is just the link to go and register if you have not created a free account. And we'll give everyone about another minute, and then James will give us some instruction to help refine the parameters of our breakout. Right before we start, I will go ahead and answer. Ron asked in the chat here, will we be touching on Dolly, Midjourney, et cetera, which are image generation tools? The plan is not to talk about that quite in this session. We'll probably touch on that a little bit in session 2, which is in 2 weeks from now, as we get into more specific use cases based on your feedback at the end of this webinar, as we help to develop that. But right now, it's more of an introduction, history, and how could this be useful in your context? And we can go a bit deeper in the last session in 2 weeks. All right, it is 11:48 Central, so I'll go ahead and call everyone back here. So go ahead and take your seats again if you have stepped away, and hopefully you are able to connect into one of those free AI platforms. If not, don't worry, because what we'll typically do is have a breakout session, and some person, you can try this, but typically somebody in your group will have it. As for Scott, any good books? The strange thing is there's a lot of ebooks that have likely been AI generated, but the technology is so new now that yes, you absolutely can read some good books about it, but the technology has changed so fast that what we're finding is YouTube channels of people just using it, podcasts and like are really, actually James Lee has a very good podcast where he talks a lot about AI. I'll let him, kind of promote that at the end, but I don't really know of any books. If anybody in the call knows of great books that they've read, please respond to Scott there. But the technology changes so fast right now that it is completely different than it was 12 months ago, which makes it a little bit hard to keep up in the printed press arena for the time being.
I'm really going to make myself sound like a young millennial here, but I found that TikTok is actually the best source of
Yeah.
the latest
Yeah.
when it comes to because it is so fast in terms of its changing and growing and developing. Yeah. By the time a book is published, it's probably behind, unfortunately.
It makes me feel so old, but I completely agree with you. TikTok is where young people are really good at new technologies, and I wouldn't really consider myself a young person anymore, but that's why I can honestly say, yeah, James, I agree. It's a strange thing.
All right, shall we dive back in?
Let's get in.
Are we ready? All right. So now for the fun parts. I love this part. So maximizing the utility of ChatGPT and similar tools is all in the prompt engineering. Actually, if you go on like Indeed.com, many companies are beginning to hire full-time prompt engineers. These are people who don't need to have any coding experiences, but they have mastered the art of writing prompts that get the best AI results. And so I found that the best ChatGPT prompts have the following 5 steps in its framework. So number 1 is to simulate a persona. So saying, I want you to act as blank. And number 2 is to write a task that you want the GPT to do for you. Number 3 is to provide context. So your audience is blank. Number 4 is to specify the goal, right? So if you have a measurable goal, I found that you get much better results that align with your goal. And number 5 is to clarify and refine, right? So asking, do you understand? Or afterwards saying, make it more concise, or these things that you can do to make it better. It's a chat bot, I say. It's not a candy machine where you just put in what you want and it gives it to you. Oftentimes, the first time around, it's not going to give exactly what you want, right? Because you also need to learn how to use this tool. So chatting with it actually improves results. So you're saying, actually, I didn't like how you said this way. I want it that way. And when you begin to have a conversation, the GPT can learn to fit your preferences and what you want. And so let's go ahead and try it out. So we're going to break up into our groups again. And when you break out into your groups, I'm going to invite you to go ahead and go on ChatGPT or Perplexity, Claude, any of these places, and try out this prompt. The prompt I have here, I want you to act as an advertiser. I need help creating an advertising campaign for blank annual event. Develop key messages and slogans, select the media channels for promotion, and decide on any additional activities needed to reach your goals. Your target audience is blank, and your goal is to maximize registrations. Do you understand? Now, when you do this, please do 3 things. Number 1, tweak the prompt. So make it better, add more context. Like, don't just copy. If you want to copy paste this to start, that's fine, but add more, tweak it to fit what you might need. And number two, see what comes out and then chat with it. Again, critique it, give it feedback on how to make it better. And then finally, number three is to discuss with your group how you feel about what came out, right? What works, what doesn't work. Am I feeling FOLO, fear of looming obsolescence now? Or am I like, well, what can I do to make this better? So I'm going to turn it over to Blake. We'll have 10 minutes to work in your groups to try this out. Once we're in our groups, Blake, I'll broadcast this so it'll also go in the chat. Maybe that will help. So you're not writing it down right now. But
Great.
take it away. Yep.
And I already put the basics, his previous slide in the chat, which is I want you to act as ... So feel free to copy that. And I'll try to see if we can give permission to share in the breakout rooms just for security. We've tried to keep that a little locked down. But what you can do, I'll see if we can do that in a secure way. And if so, feel free to share your screen. But also just have a conversation. Ideally, everybody in your group has it, so you can discuss as you try it out. But you'll hear us say this a lot in the next session. Garbage in, garbage out. The more, as James said, the more detail you put into this, the more accurate it will let you be. So I put in the chat, I want you to act as ... Your task is to just copy that, put it into whatever system you're using, and adjust it to your needs. With that, we will have a 10-minute breakout session. We'll give you a 5-minute warning and then let you know when we're about to end. So here we go.
Thanks.
Good morning.
I'm in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
I'm in East Central Illinois. We just went through a ice storm and we're now raining. So I don't know what I'm doing. I just signed up, so I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm here to learn.
I've got it up and
Yeah.
I typed it in real fast. It's fascinating what it has pulled back. It's pretty incredible.
No, I have not, Ron. Not at all.
So I'm sort of mid-age. I've got some younger staff that are using it, and I've got some friends that have toyed around with it a little bit, and then I've got 2 high schoolers, and I'm trying to figure out how to help them stay on the nice ethical road. So, but I haven't done a whole lot myself.
So are you, Ron, are you using, which platform are you using in the chat GPT or? Okay.
Hey, Ron, I have a question for you. Did you end up telling your daughter and your wife, or did you end up telling the people you gave the Mother's Day poems to that they were AI generated, or did you take all the credit?
Uh-huh.